Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville's Tuesday meeting at the Cade Museum. Please do silence your cell phones, and if you're watching on YouTube, please register your participation by sending an email to info@rotarygainesville.org. Please join me in welcoming Brendan Shortley to the podium to lead us in song and pledge.
Okay, I hope that applause means you're going to help me trudge through this one. So here we go. We're going to sing America, if that's all right. Hey, my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance. You may be, well, don't sit yet. Kevin Thorpe with the invocation.
May we pray. Father, we are thankful for this day. We thank you for this organization that brings us all together. We are especially thankful for today's program in a land that allows us to pursue both justice and liberty. Thank you even for the least of these who require the assistance of government in representation. Continue to bless what we do and what we say. It is for your sake and your glory we pray. Amen.
We invite our guests and visiting Rotarians to remain standing so we can get you introduced to our club.
Richard? Are you going to do this? Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, anybody could have done Penny because Penny knows everybody. We all know Penny by now from India. She is the chairman of the Engagement, International Relations, and Glad Handing Association Committee. All right. Thank you, Penny.
Good afternoon. My guest today is Amber Zuner. Amber's with the Miller Elder Law Firm, does things like estate planning, Medicaid, care planning, things like that. Welcome, Amber.
Hi, everybody. This is my mother, Cindy Riley. I am trying to recruit her to Rotary, so everybody be nice. A fantastic background in business and was an entrepreneur for several years and worked at mostly information technology. So these days is my delightful Oma to my two little babies and working in utilities.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. And now, Dr. Randy Caton with an announcement for the club.
Please, no applause, save it for the end. I have been honored to be asked to kick off our latest giving project, Helping Hands Clinic. We all know about the Helping Hands Clinic, so I don't need to tell you too much, except that some years ago, 5 people got together and started it. And it has been ongoing and growing since then. You can read on your tables the blurb about what it's doing and how it came about. It helps the homeless and the poor, not just the homeless. There's a thrust for mental health help, which has been ongoing for many years and probably is the best available in town. And so I just urge all of us to, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are generous. You know, you've given before and will give again. Money is always welcome, probably the most welcome, because then it can be used where it's mostly needed. So I forgot to ask how long it goes on, but it's several weeks. But the situation, the issues around homeless has caused some division among us. There are those who think we should give them everything. There are those who think they need to get a job. My dad was volunteering in Pensacola at a food bank, and he was telling all the people that came that they were lazy bums and they needed to get a job. He was fired. He's the only volunteer I ever heard that got fired. So whatever your opinions about the homeless situation, I think we'll all agree that they need help. So in my morning reading this morning, I read this, and it was so pertinent to today. It was, never judge. The heart of man is so delicate, so complex. Each is so different, has different motives, controlled by different circumstances, and influenced by different sufferings. There are hundreds of different stories out there, most of them very fascinating. And so as the Helping Hands continues to grow and continues to need, we will give. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have a legacy craft talk from John Haswell. So if you would please join me in welcoming John to the podium to give us an update on the last 43 years.
Well, I had an accordion file in a 3-ring binder, but my secretary said, didn't they only give you 5 minutes? So, hey, oh, the mic. The mic's on. Okay, thanks. Like I say, sometimes attorneys should be seen and not heard. Right? Anyway, thank you, fellow Rotarians, for taking the time to listen to an old guy's craft talk. My first Rotary Club meeting, as I mentioned this when I did my first craft talk, was in 1957 at the Rotary Club of Fort Myers Beach. I was in the 6th grade at the elementary school there, and the top students in each quarter were invited to be junior Rotarians at the Rotary Club. And so interestingly, the topic there was about this guy named Fidel Castro, who was running around in Western Cuba trying to stir up stuff against Mr. Batista. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, later I went to high school in Philadelphia, where the headmaster, so that was the first time I learned about Rotarians. Second time, the headmaster of the school was awarded the Service Above Self Award. And it was, what's a Service Above Self Award? So I learned a little bit more about Rotary at that time. He'd gotten that from the Downingtown Rotary Club. And then I went to the University of Florida, majored in political science. Like back in those days, if you wanted to go to law school, you were supposed to major in political science. And I decided to take a minor in religion. And I met Delton Scudder. A lot of here, you remember Delton Scudder. He was a chaplain for this club. And after we had a few courses together, he said, you know, you need to go to seminary. And I said, no, I don't. I said, I'm going to go to law school first. So he was very quiet about it, but a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from Bexley Hall Episcopal Seminary saying that we'd like to consider you for a 1-year graduate study, 1 year of study. I wasn't a postulate at any seminary you want to go to through the Rockefeller Brothers. And that Bexley Hall found out about it, so they invited me up. Long story short, I went there for 1 year. And the bishop of the Bexley Hall wanted me to stay for the next 2 years. And I said, no, I want to go to law school. He says, well, I went to law school too. And then I went to seminary. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And he also was a Rotarian. So anyway, after some of those issues with school and everything else, I went to law school, graduated, and I started with the firm of Chandler, O'Neill, Avra, Gray, Lang, and Stripling. I don't know if some of you may know who those people are. And once I was there, of course, they said, now you need to join a service club. And, well, business related, fellowships, getting to know people. So I first went to the Kiwanis Club and then to the Lions Club. And the people at the Lions Club said, the Kiwanians, aren't those the little birds that run around Australia? You know, and then maybe they're extinct now. Anyway, whatever. So I got an invite to the Rotary Club of Gainesville by Frank Sayer. And Frank said, don't go to those other clubs, come to ours. So I went, and I was enamored from the beginning, because then I remembered my headmaster of my school and all the other Rotarians that I'd known. And so I started here, and then I wanted to know what am I supposed to do? So I got involved in the Wild Game Feast. And I spent a lot of time. I worked on every Wild Game Feast event from 1983. As a matter of fact, Pinkesons owned the land that the Wild Game Feast is on. They were clients of our firm. And they came to me one day and said, gotten a call from somebody wanting to lease the property for putting on an event. I said, well, that's the one we're doing. And so I helped draft that lease, and then I ended up saying to somebody, you know, I think we should have a separate charitable organization that runs the Wild Game Feast, so the Rotary Club itself wouldn't be liable for anything. And then they all looked at me and said, okay, go ahead, John. So we drafted all that. I was on the board twice. I was your secretary of the club in 1989, president-elect in 1990, and president in 1991. That's why it says on there, past president. Didn't say how far past, but anyway. I was on the board. I'm a Paul Harris Fellow +8, and I'm working on number 9. And I could tell you stories about the work parties. Some of you in here would probably say, don't do that. But we had a lot of fun and experiences, especially with Ed Ellett on Rotary fishing fellowships. I went to go fishing back in those days. And a lot of other people, a bunch of them, I could spend another 5 or 10 minutes just going over their names. But ones that stand out to me a lot are Roger Brower, Dan Boyd, Parker Lawrence, Wes Eubank, Lee Pinkeson, Ben Campen, Buddy Goodman, Bob Wigglesworth, Randy Caton, and Dick Cameron. And then another person that you probably know, you probably heard of Mickey Ulmer. Well, I met him through our firm represented Sonny's Barbecue. So we volunteered their boardroom to come and have Rotary Club meetings at their place. So that's how I got to know Mickey a lot. And then he ended up being a member of our club, and now he's district governor. So that's a lot of fun. So with those people that I've just mentioned, I've just had a wonderful 40-some years with Rotary, and I really appreciate it. I'm not as active as I was because I like to see some of the younger folks do it, you know, get involved. But there's one other person I want to mention most, and he's a long-term Rotarian who's been at probably every work party I ever worked on. He's been instrumental in all avenues of our club service. He's been a club president, and he's been a district governor, and that's Wes Eubank. Thank you, Wes. I really appreciate it. Oops. And that's my report, folks.
Thank you for sharing, John. That was great. Our board member met last night, and I'm pleased to introduce our newest club member, Renata Wasman. Welcome to the club. There are 2 committees that we need assistance with. They're looking for new chairs. That's the treasurer position as well as the ethics and business. So if you're interested in that at all, please come see me. Be happy to speak with you. And Jacob Atem deserves a round of applause. I don't know if he's here with us today, but the district reached out and they had excess funds for their grant cycle this past year. Jacob worked with the district for 2 months trying to get this off the ground. There is a huge cholera outbreak in South Sudan, and through the district and Jacob's tireless efforts, we're able to contribute over $30,000 to help. So. And a couple events coming up. So this Thursday night is the monthly Rotary Social. This is the first, and every third Thursday we're going to do the same thing, but someplace new. No structure, just an opportunity for us to socialize and network and get to know each other. This Thursday will be at Grand Scheme, that's just north of here, and where they're doing the beautiful streetscape improvements by Hoach's workshop and bingo and all that right here in the South Meat Station. This Saturday at the Gainesville Harley-Davidson, we've been selected as their recipient for their 24th annual hog roast. So that'll be great. We're going to set up a tent. I've heard from about a dozen people within our club that are going to be there, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. They're going to have live music, food, and discounts on all your Harley merchandise and accessories. So if you have an opportunity, stop by, even if it's for a short time, we'd love to see you. And then the Downtown Club is having their wine and beer. They're doing a little different take on their annual auction. This is May 29th at 5:30 at the Arbor Greens Community Center, and they're doing a wine and beer pairing party along with their auction. So that'll be an exciting opportunity. And if you're interested in that, let me know. I'm going to send out an email to the club so you can register if you're interested. And at this point, I'd like to bring up Guy Joplin and introduce today's speaker.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'm very excited to welcome our guest program today, Stacy Scott. Stacy was appointed public defender of the Eighth Judicial Circuit by Governor Charlie Crist in 2010. In 2012, Stacy was elected to the office by the people of the Eighth Judicial Circuit and subsequently re-elected in 2016 and 2020. Stacy passionately defends the rights of indigent people accused of crimes and has dedicated her entire professional career to ensure fairness and integrity in our criminal justice system. Prior to becoming the elected public defender, Stacy served as an assistant public defender in the Eighth Judicial Circuit for over 10 years. She has also served as assistant state attorney and worked in the private sector as a criminal defense attorney. For over 25 years, she has litigated criminal cases ranging from misdemeanors to serious felony cases. Additionally, Stacy has dedicated herself to teaching aspiring lawyers. She is the adjunct faculty member of the University of Florida Levin College of Law. She has also served as intern director of the College of Law's Public Defender Clinic, training and supervising of a class of interns each semester. She's instructor in the trial practice program at UF's Law School and at the Gerald T. Bennett Prosecutor and Public Defender Trial Training Program. She has also been a coach of UF's Law School's trial team, leading the team to 2 national civil rights championships in 2005 and 2007. Stacy is a double Gator, earning her law degree with honors from the University of Florida, as well as her bachelor's degree from the University of Florida. So please help me in welcoming our public defender, Stacy Scott.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. One addendum, I'm very grateful that I was also re-elected in 2024, so yay. All right, so what I'd like to do is talk to you all a little bit about public defenders, who we are, what we do, why we exist, and why we're important. And then I want to save some time for questions at the end. I tend to talk almost as long as Kevin Thorpe does on Sunday. So if somebody could just give me a little heads up, I'll leave some time for questions. So who we are and what we do. So as mentioned, I'm the public defender for the Eighth Circuit. The Eighth Circuit is comprised of 6 counties: Alachua, Baker, Bradford, Union, Levy, and Gilchrist counties. There are 20 elected public defenders across the state because there are 20 judicial circuits. So we're sort of the counterpart or the other side of the coin to the state attorney's office. We represent indigent people who are charged with crimes. So folks who can't afford to hire an attorney and are facing a loss of liberty, we represent them. We represent everyone from children who are accused of crimes all the way through defending people who are facing the death penalty. We also handle a limited number of civil cases. So we handle the Baker Act cases, where if someone is believed to be a danger to themselves or others due to a mental illness, we are appointed and we represent the patient. We also represent some folks who are already committed to mental health facilities on what's called continuation hearings, whether they need to stay there or not, or whether they need to take medication or not if they're not able to make that decision. We don't choose our clients or our cases. If the court appoints us, then we are there to represent that person no matter how bad the accusation is or how bad the facts are. We employ 75 people circuit-wide if I have a full staff, which has been a challenge for the last 4 or 5 years, but 75 people, 40 of which are attorneys. We are funded almost exclusively by the state. I manage about an $8.2 million budget every year from the state. Almost all of that is for salaries and benefits. There's an additional budget funded by the state that goes to what's called due process expenses, which are the expenses that it takes to defend a case, depositions, investigations, expert witnesses, things like that. That is for approximately $520,000 a year. Last fiscal year, we were appointed to just under 15,000 cases in the circuit. About 66% of those cases are here in Alachua County. So our main building is downtown here, and I want to thank again the County Commission and the taxpayers for building us this beautiful facility that we've been in about 10 years now. And you'll see it next to the criminal courthouse with the super cool statue of Lady Justice holding the scales of justice in her hand. That was part of the Art and Public Places funding from Alachua County, and it was super cool because we got to participate with the artist in helping to design that statue, and that was really neat. So the biggest issue we face employment-wise is trying to get attorneys, trying to recruit and retain attorneys, because our attorneys are paid much less than what the private sector offers, and even less than what some county governments or federal government offers for attorneys. So why in the world would anyone want to be a public defender for the state of Florida? And the answer, I think you all probably know the answer, which is it's service above self, right? That's what assistant public defenders are dedicated to, which is serving the less fortunate and dedicating themselves to a higher cause in defending indigent people who are charged with crimes. So, why do we exist? Were there always public defenders in our country? The answer is no. The reason why we exist is a landmark Supreme Court case that was decided in 1963, which is called Gideon v. Wainwright. So prior to that, even though the Sixth Amendment to our Constitution guarantees a right of counsel, and through the 14th Amendment that applies to all the states, and people are guaranteed due process of law, a big trigger word right now, I guess, if you look at the national scene, but people are guaranteed it, not just citizens, people, due process of law. But there was nothing in the Constitution that said, well, what happens if someone is facing a criminal charge, but they can't afford to hire a lawyer? So you have a right to counsel, but that had always been interpreted to mean you can hire your own counsel, except in very limited circumstances, which was a case called Betts v. Brady, where you could get a court-appointed lawyer in a capital case where you're facing capital punishment, or in what's called special circumstances. So it was a very limited right. And what happened was Clarence Earl Gideon was basically a petty criminal. He got arrested in Panama City for burglarizing a pool hall. And when he went to trial, he said to the judge, I would like to have a lawyer appointed to represent me. And the judge said, well, you're not entitled to one. And Gideon said, well, I think I am, and the Supreme Court says that I should have a counsel. Well, Gideon was wrong about that. He was not entitled to counsel. But what he didn't realize was that by uttering those words, he was actually setting into motion a change, a fundamental change in the law of our country. And it used to be that the Supreme Court very rarely changed their minds about things. They very rarely reversed themselves on decisions. But what Gideon did, he said, I need you to change your mind. So he went to trial without a lawyer, and he was convicted. And he was sentenced to the maximum punishment, which at the time was 5 years. And he was sent right here to Rayford, Florida. And from Rayford, he drafted an appeal. And he appealed to the United States Supreme Court saying, I was denied my right to counsel. And it was amazing because the Supreme Court agreed with him. And finally, the court said that the right to counsel is included in the fundamental rights guaranteed in our Constitution, that lawyers are not luxuries, and that you cannot get a fair trial unless you have a lawyer there to represent you. As a footnote, Gideon went back to trial. His case was reversed. He went back to trial with a lawyer, and he was found not guilty. So that tells you right there the importance of having someone there to advocate for you when the government is charging you with a crime. Because, you know, when we're there in the courtroom, and I know Eric knows this too from the work that he does, we're the only person there that's advocating for our client. You know, you've got all the law enforcement agencies that have arrested them, investigated them, presented them to the state attorney. You've got the state attorney that's prosecuting them. You've got the judge that's enforcing the law. Some might argue a little weighted towards the prosecution side. I think Eric and I would agree on that. And so we're the only ones there speaking for our clients. So after Gideon, it was kind of up to the states to decide how they would implement the mandate of Gideon. So Florida was one of the first states that went with the statewide public defender system. Okay, so in some states, it's like county by county, super hodgepodge. But in Florida, they decided, nope, we're going to do it statewide. And they actually put it into the Florida Constitution that there is an elected public defender for every judicial circuit. Thank God, because I'm pretty sure in this climate, they'd get rid of us if they could. So I'm sorry, it's my editorials. But anyway, sorry, I'm speaking the truth, I'm testifying. But for real though, I just sounded like my son, sorry. So we implemented a statewide system, and that's why we have elected public defenders. So we're not free. There is a $50 application fee and a small attorney's fees, either $100 or $150 at the end of a case if someone's convicted. But our funding primarily is through general revenue funding from the state of Florida. There are some funds that come that are called trust funds that collect cash from things like traffic tickets and stuff like that, and that's a form of funding that actually used to be Buddy, but now Jess Irby collects for us and goes into a trust fund that we have available to use for our, like I said, salaries and benefits is our main issue. So why are we important? I think it's kind of self-evident and from everything that we know and everything I've said, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. You know, what is justice? Justice in our country really, it comes about through a fair fight between opposing sides. So you have a victim, you have a defendant, you have the victim represented by the state, you have the defendant represented by us, and if it's a fair fight in the courtroom where people follow the rules and the evidence is presented and it's either there or it's not and the jury decides, the result of that process is justice, right? Because it can't be that justice is there's always a conviction, right? And it can't be that justice is always an acquittal, right? Because people do bad things and they are guilty sometimes, you know, maybe often. So justice is the process. It's the due process of law that results in justice. And the right to a fair trial, the right to counsel, the presumption of innocence are what makes our criminal justice system the best in the world. And they are fundamental principles that are essential to freedom and democracy. And, when you look around the world, you see places where people can just be arrested, thrown in jail without a trial, without evidence. Maybe that place seems a little too close to home right now, but around the world, there are systems of justice that allow that. And in our country, we have a system in place that ensures fairness if it's a fair fight, which includes, are we funded properly? Are our processes that put the stakeholders in place, the judges, the prosecutor, the defense, are they fair? And if that's fair, then the result is going to be justice. Our country values fairness and equal treatment under the law. And it should not be that someone gets lesser justice because they don't have money. The outcome should never depend on how much money the accused has. Because if the system fails for one person, it fails for every person. And that's what public defenders are here to ensure, that does not happen. That we're part of the checks and balances in the system, right? And that's why we're essential to our way of life really here in this country. And, when you think about rights that we all have, a lot of times those rights are challenged by the government and in controversies in court. And a lot of those controversies involve people who are accused of doing bad things, people that have done bad things. But the rights that we're here to defend and that we're here to ensure for everyone are implicated in those cases. And so we remind people the importance of those rights through our representation of indigent clients who are charged with crime. So a lot of times I get the question of, how can you defend people who've done bad things and sleep at night? The short answer is service above self, right? And actually this concept predates the founding of our country. If we look back at John Adams as a great example. In 1770 in Boston, there were 9 British soldiers charged with murdering colonists in a violent mob scene. Paul Revere and the Sons of Liberty were stirring up public outrage against the Redcoats. The soldiers couldn't find a lawyer to represent them, but one did, and that was John Adams. Why? It was an unpopular cause. It adversely affected his reputation. It endangered his family, and he lost half his clients because of his representation of those soldiers. The answer of why he would do that is service above self. He believed that all people, even those redcoats, were entitled to a fair trial and equal justice. And he put the law above his own personal beliefs. In short, he put service above self. So he remarked that it was a sense of duty, that was the reason why he did it, and it was the best piece of service he had done for his country. So let me say this. A lot of our clients are good people who have just done bad things or fallen on hard times or who have substance abuse problems or mental illness or both. But we can defend our clients at night and sleep at night because, as John Adams did, we believe in our system of justice. If you believe in our system of justice, then you believe that every person is entitled to representation no matter what the accusation, and that's what we do. And we try to make sure, and we don't always succeed, frankly, but we try to make sure that the system is fair for everyone. And let's not forget that sometimes people are charged with crimes and they're innocent. And we're there to try to make sure that those people are not wrongly convicted. Because if you think about it, every day is a gift from God. None of us know how long we have on this earth. And I can't imagine the crushing injustice of spending even one day in jail or prison for something that I didn't do. And so that's why we do what we do for our clients. We're there to speak out for the rights of accused people, and by doing that, we protect everyone's rights. And we try to make sure the principles of our justice system are upheld, that the government actually has the proof they need to convict someone of a crime, and if they do send someone to prison, that it's done legally after due process of law. And we're there to make sure it's fair and that everyone's treated equally. And I'm proud to work with the folks that I work with and the folks that Eric works with at the Regional Council. I'm very proud of the work that we do, and we appreciate our community's support. So I thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions. How did I know? All right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll hope for somebody to volunteer to bring the microphone around unless I'll do it.
Oh, you can do it. Get your steps in.
Thank you, Jay.
Stacy, we're Facebook friends. You may have seen recently I put a general description of the due process rights and that a undocumented person might be expected in a deportation hearing. How would you distinguish that situation with a non-citizen from the due process rights that are accorded a U.S. citizen?
All right. I didn't call on Eric because I thought it'd be a tough question, but that's a good one. So I think that first of all, even people who are here undocumented deserve to have a level of due process prior to being deported. I think that's different than when a person, citizen, not citizen, documented, not documented, whatever, is charged with a crime. I don't think there's any difference in the due process rights when someone's been accused of a crime and they're facing a loss of liberty. I'm not an immigration law expert, but my impression has been that people who are in this country legally, the right to stay here is a little more tenuous than what due process would mean in a criminal case, but they're still entitled to process. It's, I guess one of my examples I think of is this. So when someone's facing a trial, right, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And they're entitled to a trial by jury, and that's the level, it's the highest burden in the law that the state has to meet. If someone's been convicted and they're on probation, they are still entitled to due process, but the due process is at a reduced level. They're not entitled to a jury. The burden of proof is lower. They still have a right to a lawyer. They still can have a hearing, but it's in front of a judge. So my guess is that the deportation process is different than being a criminal prosecution process, but that people are still entitled to a process, which it doesn't seem like they've been getting. I hope that answers your question.
Question from Zoom, Jay, real quick.
Okay.
Jenny asks, how many cases do you handle annually, Stacy?
Circuit-wide, it's just under 15,000 cases that we're appointed to.
Wow. And a follow-up Jenny has, does that number leave cases unable to be handled due to your office limitations?
No, we handle every case. We don't withdraw from cases because we have too many cases. We handle all of them. Not every case results in extensive litigation. Some cases are dropped, some cases are negotiated, some cases are litigated. It's a triage kind of process. So, we have 40 lawyers, everybody's split up in different divisions across the circuit. And I feel like we have a high caseload. It should be lower, but it is manageable.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
Eric Atria, for those who don't know. So first of all, as beautifully stated, made me proud to be
thanks.
on the same side. I want to know if you can share with everybody else. In my opinion, I'm very defensive of public defenders. Sometimes, and if not most of the time, they're the best lawyers in the room. I wonder if you could maybe explain to everybody why.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because they're specialists. They're experts in criminal law. They're there in the courtroom every single day, practicing in front of the same judge. They know the expectations of the judge. They know the parameters of what a judge will do and not do. It's sort of like you wouldn't go to a primary care physician to get orthopedic surgery, right? So that's why I think they're the best lawyers in the courtroom.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy, for for everything that you guys do, for everything Eric and your whole team does. Yeah, and thanks for the John Adams story. It's always been like one of the finest stories of the principles that underpin our country. If I heard the numbers right, you've got $8 million in salary, mostly salary budget, 15,000 cases. That's like $530 per case.
Right.
How in the world can you handle? I mean, how do you do that for $500?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did the math. Actually, it's even lower because only 7.5 million of that 8.3 is actual recurring general revenue dollars. The rest is trust fund, which the cash is, I have the authority to spend the cash if I have it. It's really one of the best bargains for the taxpayers that you can possibly get, because the statistics will show you that if we have to get out of a case because of a conflict of interest, it goes to Eric's organization, and then if they have to get out, it goes to a private lawyer. And the cost per case, even on the state set hourly rate for a conflict attorney, is closer to like $1,500–1,600 a case versus what we do. And if you get into the really serious cases like death penalty cases, if those have to go to a private lawyer, they can run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per case just for the legal representation. So I think we're a pretty good deal.
Talking stick.
Yeah.
Following up with your comment about John Adams and the Redcoats, how did the Redcoats come out of it?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, most of them, I forgot to say that part, but I do have it written down. Most of them were acquitted. There were 9 charged, 7 acquitted, and 2 convicted of lesser charges of manslaughter.
Okay. And then when you talk about the fairness between the state attorneys and the defenders, are the salaries and the monies that are allocated from the state fairly distributed on both sides?
No.
Why not?
So the state attorneys are funded at about twice as much as we are. One of the missions that I've been on since I've been involved in the Public Defender Association, so I'm president of the Public Defender Association right now, but I've been doing their appropriations since 2012 for the whole state. So we were straight up 50% or even a little bit less in some areas of what the state attorneys get, even though we're doing about 80% of the work that they do. They do more work because there's private lawyers and there's investigations that don't result in filings. But if you look at it, we're representing the overwhelming majority of criminal defendants in our state. And so we've worked really hard to move that up. So salary-wise, we've moved it to closer to 60% of the funding for salaries is what they get. Now, they are a bigger organization, statewide than we are, but yeah, I mean, they're law enforcement and we're not. We're representing criminals and they're, wearing a white hat in some people's view. So it's been a struggle to get always to get the legislature to understand the importance of what we do, and that if we're not there, the system doesn't work. Not only is it unfair, but it just won't work. It'll just grind to a halt.
Excuse me, Bill Stacewitz, thank you very much. Does your office handle the attorneys that are assigned to the kids that work or are underneath the Department of Children and Family?
No.
So that's a separate entity?
Yes. So the Office of Regional Conflict Counsel handles what's called dependency cases. It used to be that those went directly, all of them directly to private lawyers, But when the legislature created regional counsel to try to cut costs of these conflict cases, they assigned them to do the dependency work.
Most of those attorneys that are assigned to those children are public defenders, though, right?
Well, they're assistant regional conflict counsels.
Okay. And then, second question on your handling of cases, 15,000 cases divided by 40 attorneys is a whole lot. How many of those cases are litigated by a deal that you deal with the prosecutor and say, okay, he wants 5 years, we'll give you 2 and sign the deal?
Yeah, so the vast majority of them are resolved by something other than a jury trial, whether that's us convincing them to drop the charges, or motion practice where a judge suppresses evidence, or a plea deal, which is the bulk of them. I would say we're probably at about 96 or 7% of cases are resolved by something other than a jury trial. So it's a lot.
Hi, first I just want to offer my full-throated support for everything that you guys do. It's incredible work. It's often thankless work. It can be sometimes traumatizing work because of the sort of victims that you guys have worked with. So I think it's important to just acknowledge that what you guys do is really, really tough, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Second, I wanted to ask, like, how do we get more public defenders into judgeships? Like, how do we, I don't know, change public perception around who the judge should be and what their background should be? Like, how do we even the playing field on the type of experience that our judges have?
Yeah, a great question. Well, I think there has to be more elections for judges, because what we have right now, all of our county court and circuit court judges are elected, right? Except almost all of them decide to retire during their term, which means then it's a governor's appointment. And that is a straight up political process. There's a judicial nominating committee that is comprised of people that are appointed by the governor. The bar can appoint 1 or 2, but basically it's very political. And so the governor gets to appoint people that align with his view. And that's the way it's always been, whether you're Democrat or Republican, but we've been about 30 years with Republican dominated legislature. So, you know, that's problematic. So I think when there's an election for judge, you end up with more people who are tied to the community as a whole. People who the community says, we support this person. And I think that is the key, really, to getting a more diverse bench, you know, whether it's race or gender or philosophical diversity. That's the way to do it. And it doesn't happen all that often here in the Eighth Circuit.
I'm interested in the average tenure of your lawyers, how that might compare with other circuits.
I can't really say exactly circuit by circuit, but one of the things we do look at and we are talk to the legislature about all the time is turnover, right? So the overwhelming amount of turnover in public defender offices statewide, and I think this is true of state attorney offices too, is in the 0 to 3 range. And then the next range is sort of 3 to 5. But most of that turnover happens then. People come, they get some experience, they get a little trial work in, and then an insurance defense firm or a PI firm takes them and offers them a bunch more money to come and work for them. So that's where most of the turnover happens. Usually when somebody gets past that sort of 8 to 10 year mark, you tend to see then people who stay for a long time. It's been a weird year for me. I lost one of my really great attorneys to private practice, just a life choice that he made. Actually, 2 of them that were over 10 years, which was rare. wish they would come back. But like me, you know, I didn't really intend to stay forever at the PD's office. But what I found was that I still had a fire for doing the work that I do, and I still do. And I was like, you know, I find a lot of meaning in this, a lot more than just making money. You know, my dad has a big corporate law firm in South Florida. I could have gone down there and raked it in, and no, number one, I didn't want to live in South Florida. Let's start with that. But number two, it just, you know, it didn't speak to me, you know. And what speaks to me is the work that we do when we're trying to make a difference. So.
Right over here, Stacy.
Oh,
Hi.
sorry.
Hi.
There you are.
Another question related to people who are here illegally. If indeed it is true that they are owed some sort of process to be deported, does that mean that someone who sets foot in the United States illegally, instead of being escorted back across the border, that they could stand in front of the border agent and say, "I'm sorry, but I'm owed due process. I'm claiming my rights. I'm going to stay here until my process is finished." And if you're talking about millions of people, that process could take decades. So how would that work?
I have no idea. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit outside of my purview, although I can tell you just as a person, I don't, you know, it doesn't seem as bad as if someone crosses a river and you turn them back, than people who have been living here and have children who are citizens, and you're ripping them off the street of Worcester, Massachusetts, you know, and sending mothers to countries without their children. That doesn't seem right to me, just as a person. But yeah, I'm not an expert in all that immigration stuff, so I couldn't help you there. Is that it? All right. Well, thank you. All right.
Well, thank you, Stacy. We certainly appreciate all you do for our community. On your behalf, we'd like to make a donation to the Child Center for Early Learning.
All right, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it
very much.
All right, thank you all.
Our speaker for next week will be John Gregory and Ryan Kern for the science fair presentations. That's always a very humbling program. The quote for the week: "I dream of a better tomorrow where chickens can cross the road and not be questioned for their motives." And that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. The Rotary Reading Safari drawing is 672-672. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.